Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Cracker, and today I have a presentation for you, which is a bit of a new format for me. Before I begin and give you the title, we're gonna jump straight into it, and we're gonna start with an introduction, or introductions rather. So how do people describe themselves when they introduce to one another? Well, there's several ways. One of them, for example, is they tell each other what they do in society. For instance, I'm Joe the plumber, when you shake hands with someone. Another way that I've seen it done is who they work for, right? So they would people introduce themselves by saying, I work for this, that other company. Now, another option that I have seen around in my life is people will tell you where they're from. I'm from Canada, eh? Which is true, incidentally. Now, these are fairly common, but are they important? Well, they are important in certain contexts, but whenever I'm asked, what I prefer to say is what's the most meaningful about me. And the most meaningful thing about me is that I, in my life as a cracker, have made 3 people. Now, I want to talk to you about these people today. The title of the presentation is Why We Don't Want Children. Exploring why the West is losing its mind, its future, its life, its freedom, and its meaning through introspection. And introspection is what I intend to try and propose. So let me first introduce the whole argument with, in fact, arguments that I've seen thrown around as to why one shouldn't have children. One argument that I've heard is the apocalyptic argument, that climate change is man-made, for example, and more people is more carbon emissions, and you should never have children because there's too many of us and we cause this. Another argument that I've heard is that the world is overpopulated. There's already too many humans around, too many people, and everyone's miserable because of it. Another argument that I've heard, and by the way, I'm just going through these arguments very quickly. I'll discuss their merits later on. Another argument that I've heard is that children require a lot of time and effort because our careers are too important. You don't want to damage it by taking time off or caring after the children you've fathered or mothered. And another argument is that children are ultra expensive. I mean, these are just random data that I found. I have no idea if it's true or not, but it's entirely irrelevant. It's a huge number, right? We can barely afford rent month by month. Why would anyone want kids in this situation? Another argument that I've heard is that, well, it's not really an argument, but I've heard it, is that the white man is causing everything horrendous in history ever. And this is all of history. The picture over there, that's it. That's all that anybody needs to know. We should definitely stop having children as Westerners. That's just wrong. Another one that I've heard, and we start going into the more real ones, in my opinion, is I can't do it yet. I'm not ready. Right? And it always has various appendices with it, like I'm not ready because salary. I'm not ready because I don't have a house. I'm not ready because I don't have a person, which is fairly real. Next, one more that I've heard, and this is, in my opinion, what it all boils down to from every side that I've seen. Eventually, if you keep on digging and digging and digging, eventually you get to this one, which is, I just don't want to have kids. And in my opinion, this is the bedrock to all other arguments given. Now, these are powerful arguments, more or less, but they are effective. No one has kids. This is just a chart from the fertility rate trajectory of Canada, which is the country I'm from and I'm interested in. But generally speaking, this applies to the West. Nobody has kids. None of your friends, most of your friends don't have kids. You don't have kids, most likely. Why? Well, I've just given all of the arguments, right? One should be satisfied with those. Well, I beg to differ. Let's talk a little bit about the future and how it's going to look like. Will it make any sense to have any kids at all? Let's see. So, as far as I can understand it, governments are transparently tyrannical and or puppeteered. Right? It's all false. All elections are ridiculous choices between horrible person number 1, horrible person number 2, representing the entire population of a particular country. It's an absurd idea. Number 2, the financial problem. We're all in debt, and we will stay in debt for most of our lives. Everyone you know pays rent and has barely any savings at all. And whenever they do have any, they squander them. I mean, it's both a problem of practicality and mentality, as far as I can tell. Number 3, every day feels the same. Let's quickly recount the week. It's Monday morning, go to that meeting in the morning of Monday when people reconvene for whatever reason. It's all horrendously pointless. At some point, somebody's going to say, I can't confront this meeting without coffee, and everybody's supposed to laugh like clockwork, and so on. And then there's thank God it's Friday, and then there's Saturday and Sunday, everyone gets smashed, and then Monday begins again. This is the formulaic life that nearly everyone has. And we haven't even seen what automation is going to look like. I mean, of course, automation is everywhere, but I mean endemic automation. We are deaf to the market. What do I mean by this? That we don't know what anything costs. Nobody knows how much health costs. Nobody knows how much those pills cost. Nobody knows how much a dentist costs. Everyone is buried in taxes in every direction. It's very, very complicated. Very, very difficult to be able to deal with your own capital, assuming you have any. Another thing we know is that the third world is devouring us. They are conquering the Western world that our ancestors have created. And no one's there to stop them. No one has any will to fight for anything. I would even posit that no one really thinks there's anything to fight for, as far as I can understand. Of course, I'm making some generalizations with everyone. But at any rate, it is factual that low IQ savages are invading every Western country. And you're seeing more and more ghettos. And more diversity. This is happening. Who would want to have children when this is the prospect? I'm not sure. Now, another thing that I think is very, very, very important. Every news channel seems to have a political side that they promote. Gaslighting is absolutely ubiquitous. You see a thing, you observe a thing, then there's an article covering the same thing from an opposite direction, and it looks completely different, and you're there in the middle of this mess, and there's no way to really know what's going on. Yeah, that's the average Joe in the average world of media. Everybody's lying to you, just as they're lying to me. So it's not looking so good. There are thousands of arguments with some merit, some of them, most of them without, and I think it's important that we understand how we got here. So let's take a look at the past. Now, if you're anything like me, most of you have spent some time or a substantial amount of your youth in a place similar to this, a public school. And in public school, we've learned so many important things. Chief among them, we've learned that without a degree, you will be absolutely nobody. There is nowhere for you to go without a degree. Another thing that we've learned that is absolutely ultra important is that all knowledge is boring. Particularly history, that's very important. History is ultra boring. All knowledge is, standardized. You just, listen to whatever this professor is telling you, memorize it, spit it out. It's great. Another thing that we've learned that's very, very important is we've learned that we are perfect. All of us, we as individuals are just absolutely perfect. There's nothing we can fix about ourselves, nothing we should fix about ourselves. There's nothing to strive for. We're just fantastic the way we are. We've also learned, more or less in a similar vein, is that no one else is better than us. We're all absolutely equal. Totally equal. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. What matters is that you participate. We're all in this together. That's very important that we learn that. Another thing that we've learned that's interesting is that unless you utilize the scientific method to obtain a certain piece of knowledge, that is knowledge. You see, reasoning on your own couch about your life and pondering about who it is that you are or what it is that you mean to others or to yourself, that's all worthless. That's undemonstrable. Unless you have numbers behind it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't exist, you see. Another thing that we've learned that's very, very, very important, perhaps not just in public schools, but let's just say in the public, We've learned that all religion and all traditions and everything that came before us is absolutely dumb. It's just stupid. Who would believe in talking snakes and a man whose rib was torn out to make a woman? I mean, that's all nonsense. It's all absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. So why study? What's the point of even studying this past? It doesn't matter. It's all stupid. Now, the more perceptive among you probably have noticed that there may be a few problems here. Everything that we know as people has essentially been inculcated into us, inserted into our heads through this public school system and media, etc., etc., etc. And I suspect this is one of the reasons why so many people are, quote, woking up. I think the truth is catching up to the sea of lies that we all have inside our heads. We are recognizing them as we grow older. A lot of these are lies, start to finish. And we are starting to realize, wait a second, I should read that for myself. Wait a second, I should learn that for myself. And that's why so many people, in my opinion, are starting to feel severely betrayed by their parents, their school, their governments, their media, doesn't matter who. And I think it's time to reset. I'd like to take a different approach. And I'd like to look at who it is that we are with an introspective lens. I had to do this with myself because I myself hadn't really thought things through. I just lived through the motions. I probably still do. At any rate, look at this picture. Now, I dare any one of you in the audience say that this isn't a beautiful picture. You don't know who that granny is. You assume that's a granny. You assume those are her grandkids. You probably assume they're making some type of cookies. Looks like gingerbread. They're using brown eggs. It's in an old traditional kitchen, in an old traditional house with wooden interiors. That looks fantastic, doesn't it? That kind of picture looks really important, somehow. It affects you on the inside. And have you ever thought of why? I suspect you haven't. I'm going to take the liberty to ask you a few questions. See what you think of them. Let's, for example, take work. You work most of your life to pay your bills and everything, but why do you ultimately work? What is the meaning of your work? Why do you work? I'll give you my answer to that question. I know that everything I do is for my family, for the 3 people that I created that I told you about. Everything I do will go to them. The good and the bad. What about your answers to this question that you have within your head? Are they hedonistic? Are they self-centered? I work because I need to sustain myself. Are they short-sighted? I work so that I can enjoy my life. Is this an answer that you find satisfactory? Perhaps you have a good answer. I don't know. Now, another question that I have. You learn things for a substantial amount of your life, if not all of your life. You learn them. Why? What for? What's the point of you learning things? I'll give you my answer again. I teach my kids how to do things. Everything I know, well, most of the things I know, I pass on to them. What about your answer? Is your answer not pragmatic? Something like, I like the pursuit of knowledge. An entirely idealistic answer. Is this an answer that you have? Is this an answer that you find satisfactory? I'm not judging. I'm just asking. Let's try with another question. You think about the world, don't you? You get mad about news and all sorts of stuff. And you ponder. Why? What's the point of any of that? My kids, I'll answer, are exposed to liberal, and I mean the real kind of liberal, not the stolen word kind of liberal, principles. What in modern day is known as classical liberal, just footnote. What about your answer? Is it again a non-pragmatic answer? Is it something like, I like thinking? It's important to ponder. It's important to be thoughtful. That seems very meaningless to me. Let's try with the next one. Do you vote? Why? What's the purpose of your voting? Well, what do you gain from voting? Think about this for a second. Every vote that you cast that, say, gets an Obama elected will then get people to have Obamacare, which may very well be an ideal that you support. But if you have kids, like I do, well, you don't reason in that way. You reason in the way that you go, wait a second, my children are going to live with the consequences of the choices that I think are right to make. Now, that's a completely different ballgame. What about your answer to this question? Is it idealistic? Is it abstract? I vote because it's my right to vote, or I vote because it's my duty to vote. It's the only way for me to express my opinions. I don't know. How about this question? Do you really know who you are? I don't. How far back can you look into your family tree, into your legacy? How far forward? I don't know. I mean, I've condensed this into an answer that goes like this. I'm effort that came before and origin of what's to come. Now, that's somewhat poetic, but what I mean by that is that a lot of people have worked very, very hard to get me where I am. And I'm hoping I'm working relatively hard as well to get my children to where they're going to be. It's a continuous line. If you are anything like me, your answer until you were probably 30-something must have been, I am me. What's the deal? This is me. This is all there is. Well, is this an answer you find satisfactory? Perhaps you do. Another question. How did you become who you are? I don't know how I became who I am. But through my children, I get to see how minds grow, how they're born. Kids are different when they're born. They have different behaviors, different mannerisms, and then they develop them and they become different. It's a very interesting visual, sensorial experiment to conduct. I'd be very surprised if any of you had any answer to this. I mean, that doesn't have to do with your experiences of what you've done. What about all the rest? Another question. This is a question that's important to me because, as I've said before, I'm a liberal, or as most people would now say, classical liberal, which I find repugnant as a terminology, but anyway. I espouse the non-aggression principle. This is just an example of something, of an idea that's very important to me. But do I actually practice it? Well, I can tell you this. When you have kids, you learn about yourself quite quickly. You know, their activities can be very interesting. They push boundaries, they explore. They have never had the chance to understand what private property even means, so for them, smashing things isn't really a particular problem until it hits them, and so on. It's challenging to embrace the non-aggression principle. Is your answer theoretical, like mine was, until before I had kids? Of course I do. Well, that's easier said than done, sir. Or madame. Anyway, to conclude, this picture over here is, in my opinion, a picture of what happiness looks like. And I intend to pursue it. As you've seen, I've given you answers to all of my introspective questions. There are more questions than just those. You can ask yourself as many as you want, but I think you owe it to yourself to have coherent answers to your questions. And I think this is what you should take from this presentation, if anything, which is, what is the meaning of your life? What are you for? And you should think about this in the key of having children. Why is it that you don't want them? You can come up with fantastic arguments. For example, I recall in an old Q&A, one YouTuber by the name of Teal Deer, this is a couple of years ago, was asked the question as to why he doesn't want to have children, and he answered in a coherent, philosophically logical answer, which was something to the effect of, I don't think I have a right to decide to force somebody into being alive. Unfortunately, the beginning of life doesn't seem to be dependent on the individual who then gets to live the life. So I don't really know what to do with that. It's not so much a problem, it's more of a constant. But anyway, it's something worth thinking about. But clearly, Teal Deer had thought it through and had an answer to the question, why don't I want children? Now, what's your answer to this question? And if you find that you have a very poor answer or no real argument, then perhaps you should reconsider a very, very, very important choice that will, no question, change your life forever. Well, I hope this presentation has been useful or at least entertaining to you. I'm looking forward to any comments that any of you want to leave. And all the best.